Well, hi, everybody. My name is Colin Williams, Senior Client Relationship Specialist with iClicker. So looking at iClicker, the agenda really is options for adding grades to your Canvas, instructor requirements, student registration, and really, again, mainly just that live demo. So the thing about iClicker is that it does work with any presentation software. So I know that a lot of people who are coming over to iClicker at ASU may have used things like Turning in the past. And if that's the case, I think a lot of this is the way it works is somewhat similar. But unlike with Turning, you don't have to build iClicker into any of your presentations. iClicker literally just floats over whatever's on your screen, and that can be used as a question. It is a very flexible option for that. Students can use their mobile devices or the website, so at iClicker.com, to participate. Again, they have kind of a lot of options there. It works with really any web browser. We are on the iTunes and Google Play stores for them. Assuming we all stay on campus as much as possible, there is a GPS feature that you can use to set up kind of a geofence around your classroom. So that way, that's one of the things that we added pre-COVID by a little bit, but a lot more useful when you can actually make students be in the classroom. But it is a nice feature to be able to say, if you're not in this zone, you actually cannot participate. So you actually get some feedback on who's trying to check in from outside of class. And again, I'll talk about all of this in a little bit more detail as we go through. Again, obviously, it does instantly collect feedback. Students can actually use your questions as study guides. So for later on, they can create their own study guides with your questions. And you can run polls from anywhere in your classroom with our mobile app. Now, I say that, and I'll explain this a little bit more, but just know that you do have to have a desktop or laptop computer to actually run the sessions. So you do have to have a full computer to be able to run iClicker Cloud. So with that said, as you saw there, that last bullet point is that you do go into, we do work with Canvas. We do integrate directly into Canvas. We have what we call our roster grade sync. And what that is that it actually allows you to pull your roster in from Canvas, keep it updated, and send grades over at the push of a button. I'll show a little bit of what that looks like as we get into this, but just know that you do have that option. If you are somebody or you have somebody who wants to be able to manually manipulate grades, I know some people have different formulas they like to use. You can manually export grades into Canvas using our CSV file. So you can upload it and download it that way. So as far as an instructor, all you have to have is, obviously access to the internet, because everything we do runs off of, the internet. So you can run it off of Wi-Fi, if at all possible from the instructor side of things. We would suggest that you use a hardwired connection when possible, just because that obviously is going to be a little bit more stable. You'll have to have an iClicker account. Now it says sign in and create a course. The way that you will sign in there at ASU is a little bit different than other institutions, because we do have our single sign-on. So if you come here to our website, just iClicker.com, you click sign in. Obviously, you'll choose instructor. And whether or not you've created an account already, all you'll have to do is come to this area, come down here to where it says sign in through your campus portal, and then you'll select your institution. That'll take you over to your Canvas page where you'll sign in using your credentials there. I always forget about this part. But so it'll use the same kind of SSO sign in that you would generally to get into Canvas. While that's signing in, I'm going to go ahead and come back over here and just talk about, you do have to have the desktop software. So again, that can be downloaded at iClicker.com. I know a lot of the computers there on campus are already going to have that. So just know that, it is probably going to be on the classroom computer that you're in. But if not, you can download that from iClicker.com. And just to show you where that is, all of our downloads are here under the downloads page. So you'll see we have a couple of different options here. We have iClicker Classic and iClicker Cloud. I know there have been some people in the past before our site license who had used Classic. Just know that we are using Cloud now because this is the one that is going to be free for students. So you see we have Windows and Mac options here. Down here, so I talked about you can go throughout the classroom. The mobile app, again, can be downloaded from the iTunes or Google Play stores. I say that actually as I'm saying that. So it is right now unavailable for SSO schools. That is something that our team is working on, hopefully over the summer to have done. But like I said, that I remembered that SSO schools. So that is one drawback right now to the SSO. So just keep in mind that we'll send something out when that becomes available. And again, that is one of our priorities to get that up and running. For students, so students' requirements, again, they do have to have an account. When I say an account, they'll sign in the same way that you will. So they'll come to sign in, choose student, and they will sign in through that same campus portal down here at the bottom. When they sign in, again, so you can tell them they don't need to create an account. They can just sign in using their Canvas account. They don't need to pay for anything. The only way that they would get asked to pay for anything is if they are signed up for a course that is not at an ASU school. So we know some students do take classes at a couple of different places. If they're at a school and using an account or using iClicker at a school that's not ASU, they might get that banner. Again, this does only cover for ASU courses. Again, you do want to make sure that students are told to use Wi-Fi whenever possible. Again, just for stability's sake. It will work off their cell service as well if they do need to do that for some reason. But again, we will suggest always to use Wi-Fi. All right, so if you are coming over from turning, this is something that I do like to show because we do have so many people coming over, and where iClicker is different is that really you can remove all of the extra kind of additions you added to your PowerPoints or Prezis or anything like that to make it work with turning. So I know you may have had to add the kind of correct indicator or the graph here. You can literally just have a blank question, and iClicker will actually give you the ability to show a chart or a graph there of correct answers, incorrect answers on the fly. So that isn't something that you have to add into that. All right, so realistically, once you get into class to create your course, the first time you create your course, you're going to have obviously nothing here. So I'm going to go ahead and archive these. So you'll go ahead and create a new course. So when you do, you'll see that you have a couple of different options. You'll have full course and attendance only. Because it is free for students there on campus, I would always suggest just sticking with the full course. Attendance only, some universities don't have the site license, and maybe they don't want their students to pay for anything, but they do want the attendance feature. We do have that option, and so you can use the attendance only feature, but leaving that full course open, you can still use attendance, but you don't have to, you're not stuck to just attendance. You can do questions if you decide later on that that's something that you want to do. For your institution, you'll want to choose Arizona State University. Again, because you'll sign on through the single sign-on, it'll automatically populate that for you. But just like students have courses at different universities, and the instructors do as well. So if you are teaching at another university or maybe a junior college in the area, you might need to change your institution there. Course discipline, you'll see a drop-down menu, and we have a pretty decent list here of course disciplines. But if you don't see something that works for you, you can come down here to other. Course name, this is really how students are going to be able to find your course. Now, because if you use the roster grade sync, they'll actually be added to your course automatically, so they shouldn't need to go and look for your course. But if they sign up late, like first day of class, and they want to participate, but they haven't been brought in through the grade sync yet, they can search for your course by your last name as well as your course name. Start date by default is going to be today's date. So whenever you create the course, it's going to be that date. You can move that around as you like. Realistically, the only reason you'd need to move that is if you want to hide that course from students until maybe the first day of class. But even if they sign up, they shouldn't be able to see anything extra in there by signing up early. The end date by default is going to set 6 months into the future. So obviously 6 months a lot of times is longer than what you may need, so you can change that here. But what happens on that end date is that whenever it rolls around, the system automatically archives your course. That means that you can go back and actually look at the data, see what you asked during class. Students can go back and see their data, see how they did, look at study guides that they may have created for future courses that may help them. But you can't actually run any new polls, and students from next semester's course can't accidentally access this course. The enrollment feature here, again, If you want to lock this out to where students can't go and find you for some reason, you can lock that down with this. This is actually a new feature for us. So students can't actually manually add your course. But again, with that roster grade sync, typically students shouldn't be looking for your course anyway. But if you do want to lock that down for that reason, you can do that by choosing that they must be invited. Course ID and term, those are very much optional, especially with the roster grade sync. But again, for your records, or just to make it a little bit more obvious to your students, you can add that here. And meeting times are optional. The reason you may want to do that is that we do have an auto run attendance feature. So where if you know that there's some days you're not going to use iClicker to actually run a session, to run a polling session, it will still run the attendance session for you. So you just choose the day and time here that your class is, and that way, whether you run a poll or not, students will actually have to check in for attendance. When you're done with all of that, you'll hit create, and you can view your course here. And obviously we haven't run anything yet, but if we want to look at the settings, I can come right here on the left-hand side, and this is where I'll see all that information that I did fill out just a minute ago. I can change that here, so I can change that end date if for whatever reason I decide I'm going to stop this early. Devices, probably not something that you really need to worry too much about, because it does automatically allow for mobile devices. If you do want to lock it down to just mobile devices for some reason, you can do that. Again, not something that you probably have to worry about, because using remotes, you do have to have an iClicker base. So without having that, students wouldn't be able to participate with remotes anyway. But we do have this feature here, which is a focus mode. So with this feature, and again, really mainly for on campus, but as students are participating in class, at the end of class, you'll get a report that says, John Smith was in focus for 52 minutes. Well, if you know your session was 55 minutes, you'll know for 3 minutes they were out of focus. Now, out of focus just means that they were on a different app if they're on their mobile device, or if they are on a different web browser or different tab, those type of things, if they are on a web browser. In class, that's a good thing, obviously, because their phone can go to sleep and it won't say that they were out of focus. But if they go over to Instagram or Facebook or something like that, it won't tell you what they went to, but it will tell you that they were out of focus, they were on something else. So if you are worried about mobile devices in the classroom, that is one thing that you can do to kind of keep that to a minimum. If you're on Zoom, just know that if they are focused on Zoom, like if their computer is clicked onto Zoom as in focus, that will show iClicker as out of focus. So that's where, again, it really is a tool for on campus. Attendance. So this, by default, every time you run a session, attendance is taken. You can actually use highlight students once they go over a certain number of absences. So once a student reaches 5 unexcused absences, their name will actually be highlighted red. Attendance data does not track into Canvas automatically or in any way. There's not a way to send attendance data into Canvas, but we do keep the record of it for you in iClicker, so you can always go back and see how how many absences the student does have. We do have, again, that auto run attendance. So whatever days that you chose, you can run it for a full hour if you'd like to. You can run it for just the first 10 minutes of class, whatever makes most sense to you. And we also have, again, our geolocation. So using Google Maps, if you zoom in here, you'll see you can actually type in a location. If you are in your classroom and you allow for your computer to use the GPS feature, you can actually, it'll drop where you're at. But you can type in a location using Google Maps. You can drag and drop that pin to wherever your course may be, whatever building that you may be in, and you can change the radius from down to 100 feet all the way up to 500 feet. I would always stick with a minimum of 150 feet just to give you that little bit of wiggle room. So any student who tries to participate from outside of this radius will actually be unable to check in, won't be able to participate, so they won't get the points for the day, and they won't be able to be checked in for attendance. The biggest issue that we see with that occasionally is that a student will come up to you and tell you, look, obviously I'm in class, but it's not letting me check in. What's going on? 99% of the time, they can fix that by just taking their mobile device, placing it into airplane mode for about 5 seconds, and then taking it back out of airplane mode. And by doing that, it'll recalibrate the GPS and allow them to participate. Before I keep going, are there any questions? I know I'm kind of going quickly. I'm trying to make sure we're getting through everything here.
And Cohen, feel free to use more time if you need to. We have the whole hour if needs be, especially for questions.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, so polling, this is really where obviously students start being really concerned with things, is how they get their points. So starting with screen sharing. So again, and this will maybe make a little bit more sense as I actually use the software here in just a bit. But every time you start a question, iClicker will take a screenshot of your screen. You can share that out with students so they can see it as soon as the question starts. So if they're sitting in the back of the class and maybe they don't have great eyesight, they can see it on their mobile device or on their laptop. So that's a nice feature to have for that. Also, by allowing for those screenshots, like I said, students can use them after class to create study guides. Having said that, if you are worried that you might have a student who is, let's say, you don't have the geolocation turned on and you're worried they're out on the golf course instead of in your classroom and they're trying to answer questions, you can actually turn off screenshots until after class. So that way the student who is participating that way at best will be guessing what the correct answer is, and still those students who want to make the study guides after class can do so because they will get those screenshots after class is over. And lastly, if you just don't want them to get the screenshots at all because you don't want them sharing them or whatever the case may be, you can turn off screenshots entirely right here. And as far as the class results, you can turn that on or off. Realistically, that only tells them, hey, 30% chose A, 20% chose B. It doesn't tell them, obviously, how other individual students voted. So scoring for iClicker breaks down into a couple of different ways. So we have participation points and performance points. Just know that these are completely separate points in terms of how students earn them. So basically, whatever you have going on down here doesn't impact participation and vice versa. However, when grades go into Canvas, they do get merged and sent into Canvas over at once. So basically what I mean by that is participation points. If a student meets this threshold of answering at least 75% of questions, they would get this 1 point for the entire day. So you can see right here, there's a drop-down menu that you can change that threshold. Performance points is based on how they participate. So if you choose this option up here, so you score individual poll questions, as you see right here, students would get 1 point for each correct response. So if they get it right, they get the point. If they don't, they get nothing. And then down here for points for responding, you can change this to 1 as well. So if you have this set up, student answers the question and gets it right, they would get 2 points for each question. If they answer it and get it wrong, they'd get 1 point. So again, this number, if you ask 5 questions in a day, that could be worth up to 10 points. If you ask 1 question, it would be worth 2 points. So some instructors don't like that because they don't like their point values being different from day to day. So what you can do is turn on polling session or score total polling session. So what this does is keep every session to whatever point value you say. So right now it's at 5 points. So whether you ask 5 questions, 10 questions, or just 1 question, the students can earn up to 5 points. Just know with this option, there is no points for responding. So it is just right or wrong. And with that said, you can have decimal places. So if you ask 2 questions, and a student gets 1 right, they get 2.5 points for the day. The reason I point out that these points are separate, so again, I said it to be worth 5 points. A lot of instructors, they'll do that. They'll make this worth 5 points. They'll send grades over into Canvas and realize that students are getting 6 points per session. The reason is it's the 5 points for right or wrong, and then the 1 point for responding. So if you don't want participation points, you only want it to be whether or not they actually respond and get questions right or wrong. You just turn this off by making that worth 0 points. So I just like to cut down on the confusion there because I know that is kind of a pain point that we've seen with instructors. Integrations, this is where you'll be able to connect to Canvas if you'd like to do that. So I can go ahead and click connect to Canvas. It will take me over to the login. So I've already logged in just a bit ago, so that's why it's kept me logged in on this browser. But I can go ahead and click authorize. And it'll bring me back over to iClicker. So I have a little bit of an issue going on with this right now for me because I don't actually have a Canvas course with ASU. So let me do this. Okay, so typically how this works is, again, I'm going to go into integrations. I'm going to go, in your case, it'll be, one second. Okay, so when I connect to Canvas, I'll click go to Canvas. Again, it'll have me sign in, and it'll take me back over to iClicker once I click authorize. And now it'll give me a list of all of my courses. So I'll choose the one that I want to connect it to, and I will get all the different sections. So this is where if you have, maybe multiple courses that go into the same shell, but they maybe meet at different times, you can have multiple shell courses connected to multiple iClicker courses, but each section can only really be connected to one. So you do want to make sure that, if you are mapping it to different courses within the same shell, that you are kind of paying attention to where all those different sections are going. So again, I only have the one section here. I'm going to connect. It'll let me know that I am connected. And now I can go ahead and sync my roster if I want to. I can wait to do that later, but I'm going to go ahead and sync it now. And the system's going to tell me how many students have connected properly. So I have one student who's good to go, and I have one student who needs to update their iClicker profile. You're likely not going to get a whole lot of these error messages because the system is going to create the iClicker account for the student, fill out their information for them using the SSO. But you may get some things like this student may have dropped in Canvas, or the student may have removed themselves from the course, things like that. So just know that you may get some error messages, and especially early in the semester, that's okay. And a lot of times early on, it may be that the student has not actually logged into iClicker yet, ever. So they won't connect properly until they do. But once they do, you should get, and also just so you know, you can go right here to view details, and you can actually send emails to these students who are not connected properly to let them know what they need to do to resolve the issue. I'm going to click close. And lastly, you can see right here that you can choose if you want grades to go over into iClicker, or excuse me, into Canvas as one single column that updates throughout the semester, or if you want every iClicker grade to go over into Canvas as its own grade. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And now I'm going to go ahead and jump into the iClicker questions and what the system looks like. Are there any questions just as far as the settings go for now?
I had a question on how often grades get passed to Canvas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really up to you. As far as the system goes, so the way that you'll sync grades, and I'll look a little bit at this kind of as after the session just to show what that looks like, but I will show right here. If you look here under gradebook, this is where you'll sync grades from. So it's not automatic in terms of like it'll do it without any action on your part. But if you click this sync grades button, you'll be able to choose which sessions you want to send over. So it doesn't send until you tell it to, but you can send it as often as every day or once a week. It's really completely up to you.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So as you saw, I have not updated my software, but we did just have a new update come out here recently that I would suggest using, which is iClicker 5.2.2. You can update the software inside of the software by looking under the help section. I'll show that here in just a second. But again, really, if I don't know where they are on campus, if they've updated yet. For the most part, we haven't had a whole lot of issues. Really, the updates are for kind of some minor bug fixes and things like that. But if you do run into any issues, you can always check the help and then check for updates, and you can update that here in the software. As you see, if you look here under the iClicker course. If you're looking on the website, you'll see that there's a ready to start class button. I think we're actually going to get rid of that here pretty soon. That's there if you're just going to run an attendance session. You can kind of do it from there. However, I would almost always suggest that if you are going to be running a polling session, that you do it directly from the software. So doing it from your desktop. And the software kind of icon is going to look like this right here. When you get ready to start class, as you're walking in, as students are walking in, you can go ahead and click Start Class. And what it does is it's going to pull up a toolbar that looks like this. And you can put this anywhere on your screen. You can actually move it off screen if you'd like as well. If you've got a couple of different screens that you're using, you can move that off to the side, especially if you don't have a question going. But what students are going to see as they walk into class is so they'll come in, they will click your course, and then they'll see a button up here that says Join. If you have this toolbar going, they'll see that Join button. As you saw, it does take a few seconds, so they just tell them to kind of be patient. But that's why I say as class is starting, as they're coming in, you can go ahead and get that going. So they can go ahead and join. And as long as they're in that range, they're going to be able to check in. When you're ready to start class or to start questions, you'll go ahead and click this polling icon here, or button. And you can see right here we have 5 different question types. So this is just a multiple choice. I'll go ahead and click start. And for your first question, it's going to ask you which screen you want to choose. So if you have multiple screens, which one do you want the screen to capture? So you can do that. And so the question's going. You can see right here, I have the timer's running. It's counting up from 0. You can have this count down from a certain time. I think 30 seconds is the default if you choose to count down. Just know that when a question stops, there's not a way to reopen it. So you do want to make sure that you are perfectly fine with students maybe not answering in time if they don't answer in that 30 seconds. But otherwise, what a student will see is this right here. So when it does capture the screenshot and you do allow them to see that, they'll just see whatever's on your screen on their screen. Do be aware that it is the entire screen. So you can see up here at the top, you can see the tabs that are open. You can see anything that may be down at the bottom. So I do believe there is a way to just do the presentation. However, typically we have the most success if you use the entire screen. So anyway, students will choose their correct answer. You can see right here that the number of responses has gone up. A student can change their answer as much as they want until I stop that question. And then once I do, they're locked in. So from this point, I can go on to the next question if I want to. And as you see, as I click around all these different tabs, that toolbar stays up there at the top. I can minimize it down to get it out of the way. It's too big. But if I want to show the results to students, so before going on to the next question, I want them to see how the class did. I can click right here on results, and it'll show a graph here of all the different answers. I can also grade this on the fly by just clicking on whichever answers are correct. And you can make as many of these be correct as you want. So after that question's over, I'm ready to move on to my next question. I can click that to minimize it back down. And I can go to my next question. So for this question, we're going to do a target question. So when I talk about how this can be done on, everything, it's flexible, it can be done on the fly. Let's just say that I want the students to choose, I want them to tell me where the state of Arizona is. So I choose target questions, click start. And the student will see, again, a screenshot of my screen. So even if you have screenshots turned off, they will have to see it for this question, obviously, to be able to drop the pin. But that's all they're doing. So they drop a pin here in the state, they click send, and the responses come in. One thing that I do like to point out on this question after the multiple choice is that with multiple choice, the student doesn't have to click a send button. For every other question type that we have, they do have to click send. So if a student is telling you, hey, I chose the answer, why is it saying I had no response? Make sure that they're clicking that send button. So I'm going to click stop. And then when I look at the results, I can actually expand this out. And if there's 100 different answers, hopefully, if the question is where is the state of Arizona, they'll all be right in here. But on a more broad question, you'll see dots all over the map. So it is pretty interesting to see, where all these dots end up. If it is something where there is a correct answer like this, you can click and drag, and anything in this box is going to be counted as correct. So I can go ahead and click save, click results, and if I look as a student, here's the results. So there was 1 total response, 1 was correct, 0 incorrect. So, and again, when I talk about it being flexible, this is not something that's built into my presentation. It was a hyperlink, but it's not something that I had to do anything ahead of time to get it ready for this question. Next question type is short answer. And students will have up to 140 characters to type in a correct answer. Again, they do have to hit send, but they can come in and change their answers as long as that timer is still running. So what a lot of instructors do is they kind of go 2 different ways. They'll either ask a question, show the results, and then ask it again and let students have a second chance to answer after discussing it. Or they may have them submit their answers here. I can actually show results while they're live to keep that toolbar running and then give students a chance after discussing it to change their answer from there. So either way, you do have that option to kind of let students talk about things before submitting their final answer that maybe you're going to grade. But now I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and you'll see it now they're locked in. Again, just like with multiple choice, I can choose as many of these to be correct as I want. If no student gives the answer that I was looking for, I can type in an answer here, and now they have kind of a, this is right, but this is what I really wanted. And you can actually choose which answer is the best answer by choosing this little star next to it. So you see right here, whatever answer is, whatever you say is the best answer is what students are going to be given as the correct answer in their app. One other feature that we have with this is our word cloud functionality. It's not going to be real impressive with just one person answering, but you can see right here that it will give a word cloud that expands out pretty well. It will filter out most inappropriate words, just as an FYI, that is a question we get a lot with this. So it will filter those out from here, but you can go back in the responses and see if a student does enter something like that in there. The next question type is going to be numeric. Numeric is pretty identical to short answer, the main difference being that students only have 8 characters to use, and it has to be one of these. So again, they'll type it in just like they would with short answer. You'll be able to grade it just like you would with short answer, but they are locked into those characters. One other feature that we have that I'm going to use this question to show, and this is new within the last couple of months, is our, I don't have the update, that's why. But we do have a feature called confidence. So it's a confidence meter. So basically, you'll select it from here on this more drop-down menu. So you'll see right here, we have an anonymous mode that I'll show here in just a bit. We have a count or timer count, so up or down. But you'll also have the option to ask about confidence. How confident are you? So it'll give them basically a few choices at the bottom, very confident, somewhat confident, or not confident at all. So they can choose that. You'll be able to see that during class. And so on a question like this, on a numeric question, especially where they have to give an exact answer, that's something that's kind of a unique feature as well. So anonymous polling, I'll show real quick. So let's just say this question is one that I don't think the students are really going to want to give me their complete, honest answer on. So I can turn on anonymous polling from right here on this ellipses. You can see the screen or the toolbar turns black. I'll go ahead and click start. And now the student will actually see that there's an anonymous icon here, so they can come in and answer however they want. You can see that their answer doesn't, they get this answer received indicator, which is what they always want to get to make sure that their answer was submitted. But it doesn't keep highlighted, so the student next to them can't see what they choose. And when I go ahead and stop this question, when I look at results, I can see, what percentage chose which answer, but I'll never be able to know who chose what because I can't click on any of these to be correct. This doesn't turn off automatically, so you do want to make sure that you turn that off. Are there questions on any of the question types or any of the kind of polling? Okay. So that is our typical kind of polling session. It's our most popular thing that people use. Is what people use the most. We do have a quizzing feature as well. So instead of using a Scantron, you can come in here and choose quiz. It'll ask you how many questions you want to ask for the day. I'll choose 3 and start. And this is only multiple choice, and it doesn't take screenshots. So what you would have to do with this is you could have, as this does, you can have your 3 questions up on the front screen as students are answering this. Some instructors will hand them a packet of questions as they're walking in. Again, it's a great feature to use for quizzing. It's not something I would necessarily suggest for very high stakes things like exams, simply because it is something that works off of Wi-Fi. If the Wi-Fi cuts out, if a student's phone battery dies, any of those type of things. So again, we do try to suggest that it be kind of the lower stakes things like daily quizzes. But students, what they'll be able to do is come in here and answer at their own pace. So you see they just click on each question that they want to answer. Now you can jump back and forth to the questions by choosing up here. And when they click review, they can see how they chose each thing. So it'll tell them if they forgot to answer one. Excuse me. So they can come in here and choose this question, answer it there. And now when they click review, again, they'll see all of their answers. They can click submit. It makes them agree that they're not cheating. And they can submit their quiz. Once they've submitted their quiz, they are locked in. So you do want to tell them to take their time and make sure that they are completely ready to submit that. But once they are, they just want to make sure that they get this little receipt that their quiz was submitted. Just like with students, once I stop the quiz, it's going to give me this little notification to let me know that once I close it, there's not a way to reopen it. So you do want to make sure that you are completely satisfied that all your students have had time to answer. But I can go ahead and click end quiz, and now I'm done for the day. So when I click this little arrow back here, again, this is how I get to polling, this is how I get to quizzing. If I want to look at my roster and see who's checked in for the day, I can do that here as well. I can see one person has checked in, one person's absent. If I look under details, I can see who is who. But when I'm ready to stop my session for the day, I'm ready to move on, I can click this end button. And it'll ask me, do I want to end class normally? Nothing else, just be done. Did I click that button by accident, basically? Do I not want to end my quiz at all? Or I can end with an exit poll. So up here as a student, they're going to get this little indicator to let them know that there is some action required or requested. So they'll click here, and if they would like to give feedback, they click right there, and they can leave whatever feedback. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how did you understand today's class? And they can leave feedback with up to 1,000 characters. There's not a way to change these feedback questions, but you can, obviously, as class is ending, ask them, please answer the following question as part of your feedback. This information does come in as a CSV file, so you can export it, view all the data that way. It is not anonymous. It will give you the student's first name, last name, email, ID, and then their response. So if you do want to address them prior to the next class, you can do that just by looking up their information there. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit. And as you see right here as a student, they can always come in here and see how they're doing. So they can see how many points they have. They can see their attendance data. And if they come here to class history, this is where they can see session by session how they've done. So even if you're not updating to Canvas every day, or even some instructors wait till the midterms to actually send this over to Canvas, students can always keep track of their iClicker score here. From the instructor side, so if I'm on my personal computer, I can come right here to this little ellipses next to this question, or excuse me, this class, and I can choose to view course online. If I'm, doing this from my classroom computer, I do want to make sure that I sign out every class. Just keep that in mind as well. But you can always go back to this gradebook just by going to iClicker.com as we did before, signing in to where you see all of your courses and then choosing the course that you just ran. And you'll see all the information for what we did today. So you see we had an exit poll that has one response so far. We had a quiz, it's been ungraded with one participant, a poll, and then attendance session. If I click on the poll, this is where I can come in and grade after class. So I can choose each question and grade or change the grades or anything like that. If let's say I have a question so here's a, the numeric question, I didn't grade it. I really didn't like the question that I asked. So I'm going to come in here and I can click this ellipses next to this question and delete the question. You can see that I can also replace the image. So if later on, I asked, it's a blurry image for whatever reason, or I ran it over the same question before I started it as the last question. I didn't change slides in time, anything like that. But you can come in here and replace the image now as well. But I can delete that question by clicking here. And it's like that question never existed. One thing that I will point out is that you can see that I deleted question 4. It still keeps the next question as question 5. So do keep that in mind. For the quiz, again, it'll grade the same way as the polling. So I click on question 1. I can change up here, question 2, question 3. With quizzing, one nice feature that we do have that I would like to see us add to our polling is that you can actually leave feedback as an instructor. So for quizzing, I can come in here and say, D is correct because for whatever reason. And all the students will see that in their quiz data. So once I have everything graded, I can come here into my gradebook. And this is where I was talking about where you can sync the grades from here. If you want to see how each student is doing, you can do that just by looking at their total score. This score is what gets uploaded into Canvas. Unfortunately, there's not a way to just upload performance or just upload participation. It is the total score that gets sent over, either for, if you do one column or for day by day, it is the total for, the entirety of the points. But if I do want to see session by session how a student is doing, I can click right here under details, and I can see how the student responded, or how many points they have for each day. If a student, I know they didn't come to class this day because they had a doctor's appointment, or they were sick, or whatever the case may be, I can give a makeup assignment to them, and then I can come in here and manually change their grades. Unfortunately, we don't have a way to necessarily drop grades directly from iClicker for lowest scores or things like that. However, if you do send scores over from iClicker into Canvas, I do know that you can drop some lowest scores that way. I'm definitely not an expert on that portion of it, but that is something that some of our instructors with Canvas have used, is to be able to drop points that way. But as you see, again, I can click on there, I can change the points. It'll tell me how I adjusted them. And when I click save, I get this gray triangle to let me know that I manually changed the points for this student. Attendance is going to look very similar to that. So again, you can see the student has over 6 absences, so they've met that threshold. That's why their name, their checkbox here is lit up in red. But I can come in here just like I did with grades, and I can click on excused, present. I can leave a note. So I can keep track of that as well. And you'll see once they get under 5, they're no longer in red. Again, because this does not go directly into Canvas, you can export the data here as well. So you can choose as a CSV here, or if you have those notes, you can choose the full CSV with notes. And you can do day by day, or you can do the entire semester. If you come back over here really quickly to Gradebook, one thing that I do want to point out is you can see there's these little markings next to the students' names. If the student is connected with Canvas, you'll see that either their name will have a green dot next to it, or they'll have this line. This line just means that I haven't synced grades yet. So there's no problems. The student is connected to Canvas. The next time I sync grades, you'll see a green dot next to their name. For this student, the reason they have this kind of empty circle is that they need to update something in their profile. So again, it could be that this student isn't in Canvas for whatever reason. And you know, I know especially in the first couple weeks of class, you may have a student, or at least the first week, you may have a student who is on a waiting list. But if they want to show up and still participate, they can do that. So that way, whenever they do show up in Canvas and you sync the roster and the grades, they'll show up properly. Every time you sync grades, the system will automatically sync your roster to update that. But if you want to sync your roster without syncing your grade, you can do that from right here under the People tab, under the Sync Roster button here. That is really kind of the main gist of it.